Okay, we're going to resume for the afternoon session. Now that you have all exhausted your box lunches. So if there will be stipulated penalties if we don't simmer down. Okay, so thank you all. Thank you for coming back after lunch. And I'm going to ask Margaret Berry of Arnold and Porter to introduce our keynote speaker. Margaret is, among other things, the co-chair of the New York City Bar Association Environmental Law Section, and I'll leave it to Margaret.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome back from lunch. To kick off our afternoon program, we are honored to welcome Lisa Garcia as our keynote speaker. President Biden appointed Lisa as Regional Administrator for EPA Region 2 in November 2021, and she previously led EPA's environmental justice work during the Obama administration. She has also served as Vice President for Litigation for Healthy Communities at Earth Justice and has worked in both the Department of Environmental Conservation and the Attorney General's Office in New York. So she has deep roots in Region 2. Thank you for being here, Lisa, and I will turn this podium over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Margaret. Hello. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming back after lunch, as Michael said. It is a pleasure to be here, Lisa Garcia. It's so great to be here, standing here as Regional Administrator for EPA Region 2. I would say it's an honor. One, because it's really great for me to serve, as I like to say, my home region. I live in New York, from New Jersey. Thank you, Jean. Grew up in New Jersey. My family's from Puerto Rico, and so I need a few connections more to the United States Virgin Islands and the 8 federally recognized Indian nations that we represent. So it's really great to be here to talk to you. It is also really great to be here because I remember many, many moons ago, sitting in the back as a recent grad or just started in environmental law and environmental justice at NILPI. There's a few people here from New York Lawyers for the Public Interest. And just remember being here and seeing the RA, being like, ooh, the RA is here, the commissioners from different states and from Puerto Rico is here today. Secretaria Rodriguez is here with us from Puerto Rico. So I just remember being in awe of how many people were here and how many environmental experts were in one room and how much I was learning. And then I remember Michael Gerard asked me one day to speak at this conference about environmental justice because my passion really, starting at NILPI, really became environmental justice. And I was on a panel, it was at 4 p.m., or it was the last panel, and I remember saying something like, one day you're gonna realize how important environmental justice is, and you're not gonna need espresso to get through the afternoon session. So it's also great that I get to talk about environmental justice or this great work that we're doing early, and I heard that earlier Candace and Adriana from New Jersey and from New York were also here talking about environmental justice. So it's just wonderful to be back and understand that environmental justice, equity, climate justice now is so important to all the work that we do. So I know that you thought maybe this would be a keynote, but I just want to thank everyone for being there in 2002 or 2001 to help me through my career to be able to get here. I just want to say thank you to a few people who are in the room who were part of this years ago, like Michael Gerard. Kevin Healy, I saw Kevin Healy before. There were a few people along the way who were opposing counsel, like Michael and Kevin Healy. And Chris Fazio and Stephen Cass, opposing counsel, who ended up becoming friends and mentors, because we're all really in this work together, and I was able to learn so much from everyone. Also, the people who helped me start this career, talking about issues like there are more polluting facilities in communities communities of color, in low-income communities, in communities that don't speak English as a first language. Just learning that at places like New York Lawyers for the Public Interest with Gail Suchman and Eddie Bautista, who was there at the time, also working closely with Kit Kennedy from NRDC, and here at Columbia Law School, Ed Lloyd. I was telling someone recently, Ed, who ran the Environmental Law Clinic. I was saying that I was an attorney at NYPIRG and I was one. So I had to do the research, figure out the claims, write the briefs, okay, this is when we had to make copies of the briefs, had to staple them with exhibits, and then you remember the backs that we had to flip over to make sure, then run down to the court, purchase the index number, get the index number, go serve everyone, come back and make sure that everything was done properly. So the Environmental Law Clinic for me became my co-counsel, where students from Columbia Law School were helping us file these cases. And so even as students here at Columbia, having that opportunity to work on actual cases that we were filing against the state of New York, against EPA, and other places. But it really was the partnerships, I think, that I built, and people who supported me in so many different ways, like I said, whether it was an ALJ in a case, opposing counsel, co-counsel, students that were helping us out, that really helped me to get here. And I wanted to make sure that I started with the thank yous for me standing here today. And I will give a special shout out also to the people that I work with now at EPA. There's many here. It is an amazing group of people at the Environmental Protection Agency that help us get the work done every single day. I'm just standing here basically talking about the great work that about 800 people at EPA are doing, and especially the attorneys here, because you're here. Thank you so much. So thank you to EPA staff. Thank you for helping to bring this forum together and to have all these great topics discussed. It really is wonderful to be able to serve alongside all of you. And I will take a special moment when we talk about EPA to say thank you to Walter Mugden. I don't know if this has been done already. Almost 48 years. 48 years. Stand up, Walter. Stand up. Thank you. He serves as the Deputy Regional Administrator, but really the right-hand person that I rely on day to day. And he is retiring, well-deserved, but we will definitely miss you. Thank you, Walter. Okay, so now I'll get to the piece. Oh, and I also want to say, I used to actually sue with people like Basil Sagos, thank you, now Commissioner. I have a great team of partners now as Regional Administrator in the state. So I don't know if New Jersey DEP Commissioner is here yet, Sean LaTourette. Great partner in New Jersey DEP, Basil Sagos, who's Commissioner of New York State DEC, great partner there, and Rit Argawala, who is the Commissioner for New York City DEP and advisor on climate. You'll hear from them next, and Secretaria Rodriguez from Puerto Rico. These are the people that I work with every day in the region, and that's why we have an awesome region. And also Colonel Lozado from the Army Corps of Engineers, our partner agencies. So again, thank you. So you came here to hear my thank you speech. Thank you. I just think it's really important for us to once in a while take this opportunity to say thanks. So it is a great region. I'm really happy to serve. And one of the reasons that I came back to work at EPA, to serve in this administration, is because President Biden early on, the first day, signed an executive order on tackling climate change here and abroad. And in that executive order, the issues around equity and environmental justice and climate justice were highlighted. There is an initiative or a requirement that says all federal agencies have to work together. We're going to take a whole of government approach in tackling this issue of environmental justice and the climate crisis. We are going to also ensure that we promote an initiative called Justice 40, which makes sure or is a mandate to every single federal agency that 40% of the work, of the benefits, of the investments go to disadvantaged communities. And this is really all groundbreaking. The first time the federal government is saying this. I remember in even one of the early speeches, environmental justice advocates around the country celebrating that a president just said environmental justice, I think in the State of the Union and in one of the first speeches. It's monumental. And for me, it was just really exciting to think of the work that has been done over the years by community leaders, by environmental justice leaders, by climate justice leaders, to get to this place where they are at the forefront of a presidential priority that's going to flow through every single federal agency. That was really exciting, and lucky for me, I had the opportunity and was asked to come back and serve as regional administrator. So we took those priorities around environmental justice and climate, and in the region, we created a few priorities to help advance, obviously, the work that we're doing. One is environmental justice. How do we truly embed environmental justice in all the work that we're doing? Another priority around climate change, justice, and resiliency. So not only talking about maybe reducing emissions, how do we ensure that it's equitable, and how do we ensure that there's resiliency behind that? And so that was another priority. Enforcing and assuring compliance with the nation's environmental laws. So all of you can help with that. Making sure that our enforcement arm is just as strong. Because one of the things about environmental justice that I hold near and dear to my heart, that I learned over the years, is that not only is it about the exciting new project of renewable energy, let's say, it's also about the legacy issues. We have to clean up contaminated sites in communities. We have to go back and make sure that there are no spills or legacy toxins. So it's about both, and then our enforcement arm really helps us to get there. And then, of course, improving our outreach partnerships and work with communities, local governments, states, territories, and our Indian nations. That's how we get the work done. EPA only has it's a certain lane. We can only do it with our partners. And then, of course, internally is diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And I was really lucky when I was appointed to get one FTE, one other role that I could hire in as a political partner, and I hired Olivia Glenn, who serves as Chief of Staff but Senior Advisor on Equity. Olivia came from New Jersey as an Assistant Commissioner for Environmental Justice, so thank you, New Jersey DEP, for allowing her to jump over. But really, she became my partner in advancing these priorities and making sure that we're always talking about equity and internally about diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility as we move forward. And so that's the goal we should all be working towards. It's really exciting to be here, like I said, to do this with all of you, all of my partners in the States. And of course, the great thing, and I'll end here, is not only do we have these great priorities, but we also came in at a monumental time when I think it's the EPA alone, between the American Rescue Plan, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and the Inflation Reduction Act, got $130 billion. My talking point said billion with a B. $130 billion to be able to advance this work on health, equity, and really resiliency in American communities in the work that we do. And remember, 40% at a minimum of that work goes to disadvantaged communities, to really uplifting communities that we haven't met the mark, we haven't brought about the benefits yet. So I love to talk in the region and with folks about our work being how are we reducing the burden, how are we reducing those legacy issues, and then increasing the benefit. And that's the work that we're really tasked to do, and it's so exciting to do it with everyone at EPA and all my partners. So with that, I will say, remember, if there are students in the room or baby attorneys like I was, make sure you talk to other people. Everyone here should be considered a partner, someone who can support you. We're all doing this together. We all need to be in it together. And I just look forward to the continued work with everyone. So thank you. There's a song.
So we are going to have time for questions. I hope it's okay that I take the moderator's prerogative and ask the first question, but then we'll have plenty of time for questions from the audience. But for all of the emphasis that the Biden administration is putting on environmental justice, what steps or strategies are there for ensuring that these priorities, it's a durable priority that sticks with us through whatever comes next, whether that's sooner or later?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things is the administrator early on put in a request to Congress, I mean, this is a congressional ask, to be able to have a completely new office, a national program for environmental justice and civil rights. And that was approved. And so last October, on the anniversary of the executive order that President Clinton had signed, the Administrator Regan, announced that now EPA will have a standalone national program on environmental justice and civil rights. And so that's the way that you ensure that there will always be a budget. It has 200 new FTEs, as we say, right? So 200 employees. So you're locking in the budget, the people who are going to do this work. And then around the region, each region then got some of the staff, and we're about to stand up. In Region 2, Olivia and I created the Community Engagement and Environmental Justice team, hoping that this would go forward. And now that it's official, we're going to convert it into a division. And so I know it sounds elementary to have a staff, but it's true, right? The air office has never gone anywhere at EPA. The water office has been there since the 70s. So this will be a standalone division and office, like I said, that will be secured. That's one way that we're doing it. Obviously, in the Obama administration, we wrote the guidance on environmental justice in our environmental laws, and so that was updated. Another piece is we created the environmental justice screen, EJ screen, which is a mapping tool. So really making sure that not only is there the structure and the people to do the work, but they have the tools locked in and the ability to do the work. So I think that there's certain moves that we're making that it won't be able to be dismantled as easily as maybe in other times.
That's great, thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience? Well, I will ask another question. I was wondering if you could talk specifically about the Inflation Reduction Act and all of those funds that have been designated for what we call New York disadvantaged communities or for Justice 40 communities, and what are the challenges and opportunities in reaching out to the communities to find out what priorities should get that funding?
So the IRA, I think Joel talked about this earlier, but the IRA is divided up into a few different buckets. And so one of them was the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant that New York State, New Jersey, and Puerto Rico have all signed up for. So that's the $3 million the states and the territories are getting to plan for the climate work. And then in 2024, we're hoping to take those plans and then talk about implementation and fund it with $4.2 billion. So it's the planning now in 2024, making sure that EPA then funds it through this implementation money, the $4.2 billion. That's across the nation, but I have faith in New York, New Jersey, and Puerto Rico and the USVI that will be right there with our plans, showcasing what can be done. And then there's $27 billion under the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. That is almost like none of us will be able to see that money. We may be able to see the projects that go forward, but for instance, I think it's 14 billion are going to 2 entities. And the hope is that these entities will then have the ability to have a pass-through of the funding to more projects. $7 billion is going to go to municipality and to states for solar, so that's the community solar programs that we see. And these are all programs that really everyone needs to have kind of the project in line or the design ready to go to be funded. So the one challenge or the one ask that I like to talk about when I talk about the climate funding that's coming out of EPA. Years ago, we used to say, make sure your project is shovel ready. The challenge here is, we know that there are communities that are shovel worthy, but do not have a grant writer on board, do not have an engineer on staff, do not have an architect or the geologist or anyone else on staff. It is our job collectively to really try to get the word out that this money is coming, and we really want to reach those communities that are shovel worthy, provide that technical assistance, get them ready for the funding. This is true on the water infrastructure piece with the bipartisan infrastructure law for water infrastructure, making sure communities can get to the point where they are ready to access that the money for the project. So I say, let's go and figure out who the shovel-worthy or communities are in that piece.
Yes.
This is Jean Fox, former regional administrator of Region 2. So I will be very careful with my... No.
Best job I ever had was EPA.
Best job, and thank you. You convinced me that it is. Yes, thank you.
The best part of it was Puerto Rico. So when I was RA, we took that office from, I don't know, 10 people up to, it was supposed to go up to 50 or 60. I'm just curious, what's going on with Puerto Rico now? Because obviously Puerto Rico, as an island, as a commonwealth, is an environmental justice issue itself. The case, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So how are we doing from an EPA point of view, and then later you could answer, with EPA treating Puerto Rico? One of the benefits of you being RA, you're Puerto Rico, that's a good thing. But how are we doing with Puerto Rico getting their fair treatment?
Yes, it helps que hablo español también. So that's one way. But no, really importantly, with the secretary and our Caribbean office that now has about 60 people, so thank you, yes. We have a whole office in San Juan, is really, one of the things, for instance, is trying to figure out how to get that direct funding so it's not alone. So the climate pollution reduction grants, Puerto Rico was invited to participate as a state, just say yes, they did, thank you, and got the $3 million. So really beginning to see ways of supporting the work without a lot of hoops or, other barriers, I would say. The other is there's a whole White House initiative around the economic issues. We're working closely with the Secretary of Energy on the grid modernization, like really figuring out how do we help and support Puerto Rico become resilient against the next hurricane or next drought. And also on all the water infrastructure stuff. It's been really fun working with you and the Department of Health in Puerto Rico, trying to figure out, again, how do we get to the smaller systems and ensure that they have the right drinking water infrastructure that will not go down in the next hurricane. And so it's really focusing on the EJ piece and also on the climate piece together. So how do we build it together? But I'm sure the Secretary will have a lot more to say on the great partnership. Yeah, thanks.
One more question. Bethany, my co-chair.
Thanks, Margaret. If you want, you can pick somebody else. So I want to ask kind of a question, Lisa, about your, from your experience and expertise. What are your thoughts on best practices from the government perspective on community engagement? Earlier we were talking about the challenges with sorting out what the map should look like about, with regards to disadvantaged communities and getting folks from those neighborhoods involved in the mapping process and just all the challenges there. What are your thoughts? Like, should the government be funding people to engage with them? Like, what are the best practices? What are the things that we as a community can work on building and supporting you in?
Yeah. So EPA definitely has part of the EJ priorities is figuring out ways that we can meet the need of capacity. So we've heard that a lot. Communities, you know, we don't live in health one day and then employment the other day. And so can you help us figure out ways to engage with the federal government, with the state government in ways that make sense? So what we've done is we just announced that there's going to be a technical assistance hub for Region 2, one out of New York with We Act and the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance. That's one hub. And then one in Puerto Rico that's really going to help the territories figure out what all the stream of funding is from the federal government, figure out how to apply for funding. So I say the responsibility is to meet communities or to meet them where the need is. And one of them is don't overburden them with constant meetings and constant webinars and saying, okay, well, we need to do community outreach, so here's like every single agency is going to do this and roll it out in different times. So let's be a little bit more strategic on how we do it. The great thing that we did right when I came on board with New Jersey DEP and Candace Perry leading that, with Olivia in New Jersey now here at EPA, but was how do we, as the two agency, go out and do an EJ roundtable and an EJ tour. So they are meeting with the federal government, they're meeting with the state, and now the U.S. Attorney's Office is joining us in those meetings, and the local elected officials. So just being strategic on our end, this is our day job. We have 12 hours a day to do this. Communities sometimes have an hour at night. How do we streamline it? How do we make it easier? The goal is to maximize community engagement, get that input, make sure we're listening and doing right by communities and Indian nations and tribes. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we're doing it and being more efficient and maximizing it. Yeah, so it's not to say don't do it, but do it in the best way that we can.
I think that's all we have time for because we're going straight now into the Commissioners Speak panel, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
For all you're doing and for all you bring to this position.